Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 6 review of The Walking Dead spin off series, The Ones Who Live. We're here, right, guys? We're closing off this first season, or I think it's the only season, right? And like I mentioned in my episode 5 review, I'm going to be giving you my thoughts on all the episodes and my closing remarks at the end. So, first, before we jump into the episode, let's just kind of review the episodes up to episode 5. So we start off with the first one. The first episode is basically giving us the context of where Rick is. So he's at the CRM, what he's been doing. He's been trying to escape, but he has been unsuccessful. And Michonne is basically the one who handles episode 2. So episode 2 is all about Michonne, her journey to finding Rick, to getting to Rick. Now, what I really enjoyed about watching episode 1 and 2 is that they're parallel. And I've seen this before, and I actually made a video on my review and my take on the movie from Saw 4, where in Saw 4 you find out that everything that has been happening in Saw 4 was actually happening at the same time that Saw 3 was happening. So Saw 3 and Saw 4 are parallel, and just like that, in The Ones Who Live, episode 1 and episode 2, Rick's episode and Michonne's episode, respectively, are happening at the same time. They're parallel. And at the end of episode 2, we see that union of what happened at the end of episode 1, which was when Rick is in the helicopter and the helicopter comes down. We see that it was Michonne and Nat who end up doing that at the end of episode 2, right? So I thought that was great. That's really superb storytelling, as they would say. Episode 3 is where they're at the CRM compound, and this episode I felt potentially it was the slowest. Episode 1 was kind of slow too, but episode 3 I think was even slower. I mean, episode 4 is slow, but there's a lot of drama because of Rick and Michonne needing to talk about everything. But episode 3, there's not really much going on in episode 3. They're at the CRM compound, but it's just weird. It's slow. Rick's there trying to kind of do, but let's remember that he's still not the Rick we know. Michonne's Rick. He's the CRM's Rick, so he's trying to figure out how to stay there. He tries to get Michonne to go. There's some tension between Michonne and Thorne. But other than that, I don't think there's really much going on. I think this episode was where Rick tells Jadis about her haircut, and that was epic, right? Because I think everybody thought that, right? Everybody was like, "Yeah, Jadis's haircut is shit," and then Rick actually says it, and I think it was in episode 3. But yeah, they had a lot to talk about. They needed episode 4. Episode 4 is where they reunite. So there is a lot of emotional baggage, a lot they talk about, and it's basically where Rick is retransformed into his old version. And episode 5 is where they're actually out and about, right? They meet some people. I think episode 5 and 2 may be the best episodes. They may be the episodes that have the most vibe, the Walking Dead vibe, where they're actually out and about, in the forest, meeting people, adventuring, which is kind of like the essence, the heart of the Walking Dead, right? That adventure sense, right, for our characters. And it's also Jadis's journey, right? So we see that Jadis would meet with Father Gabriel once every year, and she dies, but she kind of redeems herself at the end, potentially, by giving away, by telling them, like, go get my file, and burn it, and save yourselves, which is actually where Rick and Michonne decide that they're gonna go and take down and stop the CRM, right? Episode 6. So now let's get into the review of episode 6. Episode 6 is basically Rick and Michonne stopping the CRM like they said they were gonna do and getting home. Now, I have mixed feelings about episode 6, just the overall general take on this series, season, only season, and the final episode, right? Just what happens at the end, but we'll get into that. So this episode starts out kind of interesting. So the plan is to go back to the CRM, if you recall from episode 5, take the file, right, Jadis's file, and stop the CRM, destroy, kill the people in the CRM. I feel like there wasn't a whole lot of context. I mean, we do see that the CRM has helicopters, has people, but we don't really meet like any soldiers, anybody besides Akafor and Beale and Thorn. So we don't really know, how far their reach extends. In this episode, we get a feel that their reach was actually very limited. They were kind of like an elite or a selective group of people, and there are people beyond them that not necessarily they have more power, but that aren't as bad as the CRM. Now, we'll get into why that is with Beale. But it's very interesting, the beginning of this episode, because you have Thorn basically welcoming Rick back, like, hey, you bastard, where you been? And Rick's just like, oh, we just had car trouble. Like the helicopter was coming down, and we threw ourselves off the helicopter, or I threw myself off the helicopter, or something like that. Um, and I love it because there's this narrative between in Thorne's mind. I think, and even the creator was saying this at the end of the episode. You have this kind of a mirror reflection, I guess, that Thorne, Rick have with each other. Even I think with Akafor, where they're talking about giving up the old life that you have, right? And Thorne says that giving up for her used to be a weakness, but now it's actually a strength to move forward. It's not a weakness as to like letting go of the past. Giving up is a strength to move forward, right? And if you recall, this is totally opposite to what Michonne and Nat would talk about, which was hanging in a little longer, right? But also that debate of not knowing when to let go, right? If giving up and letting go are weaknesses or strengths, and then the strength of just holding on a little longer, which was Michonne's struggle, right, with Rick, like her not knowing whether Rick was for real or whether she still needed to hang in a little longer. From the moment that she was searching for him to the moment when psychologically and emotionally she was trying to bring him back, right? So they start talking about that straight from the get go. When Rick returns and Thorne is there, and basically Thorne, I think, says like Beale's looking for you, which is this bald guy who's in charge of the CRM. And he says, well, yeah, I have to go talk to him. At the same time, parallelly, Michonne is breaking into the CRM compound. She has this zombie follow her, and then she jumps like on top of the building, and some CRM soldiers come out and they kill the zombie, and that's the way in which she manages to break in, right? She eventually finds Jadis's room office. There's a bunch of paintings there. There are some paintings of Father Gabriel. I think there was even one of Michonne. Yeah, there's some CRM guys, I think. And she ends up finding the files, which are actually like pieces of paper, like some sheets of paper that Jadis wrote up, talking about everything: Alexandria, Michonne, Rick, everything. She finds them in this cat, right? So she takes out the pieces of paper, rips them up, and I don't know how she gets rid of them, but she picks them up the floor and she takes the pieces of paper with her. At the same time, Rick and Beale are talking, and I guess Beale is giving him the echelon. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. The echelon briefing, and the briefing basically establishes, or is going to, the intention of the actions of the briefing are for the CRM to establish themselves as the supreme rulers, right? So they have this type of like Soviet Union, CIA, Cold War vibe, right? Where they're like, we have spies, we have people infiltrated in the neighboring places. We have people and spies and operators like in different places around the continent and even the world that they can influence, like the people that are in there. So he talks a big game, right? It's like supposedly like we're gonna basically like establish ourselves. And again, at the same time, Michonne ends up going to this briefing for the CRM soldiers where they talk about what they're going to be doing, which I guess is them going to this like place, and I guess they know who are like the smartest or the most apt kids, which is only like 10% of the kids there, and they're gonna take them all out before they say liquidate all of them. So they're gonna end up killing all the people that are there, because this is kind of like that vibe of they say it's not survival of the fittest, it's not natural selection, but it's artificial selection, which I guess is kind of like what the Nazis did too during World War II, where they would pick the people which they thought were the most were the strongest, were the most intelligent, were the most apt to continue propagating the human species or something like that. And we get a feel of why this is. Beale, I guess, had to make a sacrifice, and this becomes like that recurrent theme that I've seen in so many movies and series, which is basically you do what you have to do versus doing the right thing, right? And this is basically euphemisms for bad versus good, right? Like doing the right thing, doing what you know is right, not killing kids or not killing people just because you want to have the strongest and the most intelligent. And then you have the other side, which is like, I guess Beale had to kill his community in order for another community to thrive or survive. So he's kind of traumatized by that, and he wants to keep doing that type of thing, right? And that's what the CRM is plotting to do, I guess. But what I'm saying is you don't really see that extension to the whole. You don't get a feel of what that really means, because he does talk a big game like worldwide basically, but then the way in which Michonne and Rick just defeat the CRM is kind of like that was it. That's all it took for the CRM to be stopped. But we'll get into that in a moment, right? Okay, so Michonne hears that briefing, and at the same time, I think it was kind of cool because you have a lot of these flashbacks of the original Walking Dead series. You see Negan a couple times, you see Maggie, you see Father Gabriel, you see Eugene, you see Rosita, you see like all of these characters from the series, and as they're saying stuff, and you have the emotional music and everything building up, and you get all these flashbacks, and I think that was kind of cool. Moments where Rick had to do stuff like bite off that dude's ear or kill somebody by biting them in the neck. When it was Savage Rick, right, with his jacket on, and also Michonne like cutting people off and stuff with her katana. So you get a lot of that. And then there's this very tense moment where Beale puts the sword. So they talk a lot about the sword that kills. The sword that kills is the sword that gives life. So it's this like, you need to defend freedom, right? You need to defend life. So against like the people that could take the life. But I guess in this way it's kind of distorted, because he's just having innocent people die just because he wants to, in a way, guarantee the survival of the fittest. But that's his perspective, right? Like, how do you know if they're really going to be, like what criteria are you using to say these people should die because they're not fit enough, but these people should survive because they are? And then there's talk of nepotism, which is corruption, basically, when he tells Rick, like, if you have people that you love, that you care about, we can, exempt them from this mass genocide because they're your people, right? And it's like, well, that's a nice criteria you're using, right? Just because they're part of the people that you're with, they get to survive, but the people that aren't fit into your criteria or into your little checklist of, people that are fit enough to survive, then they died. That's kind of stupid. So there, you see, there's corruption in Beale's monologue. So it's like shut up, Beale. Like you don't even know what you're talking about. And so then there's a tense moment because um, Beale tells Rick, like, you have to swear on the sword that you're going to become like the next leader. You're all in for this, right? For after he gives him like the Akalam briefing and everything that they plan to do. And Rick, the whole time, he's holding onto like some knife, and he hesitates. And then Beale see that Rick hesitates, and he's like, "Oh no!" So he like goes back a little bit, and then Rick throws a knife at him, and they start fighting. Rick ends up killing Beale at this moment, and then he ends up talking to Thorne, and he says, "Yeah, I just spoke to Beale. He gave me the Ekalam briefing. I'll talk to you later about it," right? Because Thorne still doesn't know about Rick and Michonne's plan. Which somebody told me here in the YouTube channel that they thought that Thorne was actually going to end up like helping Rick and Michonne to the point that she may even sacrifice herself, which actually doesn't end up happening. But I was waiting for that. I thought that that was gonna happen too. That she would like try to help them out. At the end, she does say something like, "Oh, yeah, I agree with you guys. I agree with Okafor, or Okafor was right," which is the person that died in the helicopter back in episode one. That was kind of like telling Rick, like, swear on the sword, and but their intentions weren't really clear, you see. So it was like, are you trying to manipulate them into the CRM, or are you actually saying that you're against the CRM and you're trying to take them down? I think that part wasn't really clear. um, so yeah, he ends up killing Beale, right? And then he ends up taking uh, the body out of the office after Rick talks to Thorne. He tells Thorne, "I'll see you, you know, somewhere else." And Beale has gone to kill zombies like at the frontier, at the borderline. Um, so yeah, like, "I'll see you later." And Beale told me that I have something to do right now, and he just stops talking to Thorne, and Rick ends up putting Beale in this like container, and there's this elevator scene where Rick, it's kind of funny. Rick takes Beale's body down or up. I don't remember where he's trying to take the body, but this random CRM soldier enters the elevator with Rick, and it's kind of awkward. They don't even say one word to each other. They're just kind of sitting there the whole time, like with their heads kind of down. And then from the container in which Beale's body is in, blood starts to drip out of it. Excuse me. Rick notices this, and he says, he thinks like, "Oh crap! if this guy figures out, we're gonna have to throw hands." So the guy, the other soldier, eventually ends up noticing the blood. So they start fighting, and that fight takes a little longer than the one with Beale, because this is a CRM soldier. So Rick ends up killing the soldier, and then Michonne ends up in the elevator, and Rick thinks that it's some other guy, but Michonne's like, "Whoa, whoa, it's just me." Right? So then Michonne's like, "Yeah, we gotta stop them." Because she just saw the briefing, so they both now have all of the intel, all of the information of what the CRM is trying to do. So they're like, "Yeah, we have to go." And I think Rick, at a certain point here, he hesitates, and he says, "We should just go." And Michonne's like, "Hell no, we gotta stop these guys, because eventually they'll get to Alexandria, right? They'll get to our kids." Um, so then I felt like this part, it wasn't really rushed, but they're having like, the CRM soldiers are having like this meeting, this reunion, and all of them are there, and they have the gases like right there also. So Michonne gets like all these grenades prepped up, and they use Beale and the other CRM soldier which are now zombies, as like the people that are gonna, as they walk away, they're gonna pull on a string, and that's gonna detonate like all of the grenades. So they have that plan, but to me it was like, how did nobody see them? How are they able to push the grenades into that build, into the little, like, it's like a little carp, or it's like this little tent, big tent that they're in, but like no soldiers are around, nobody is there, like they're there but they're outside, and they're able to just do all of this without being seen. And then they end up like walking out, and as they're walking out, like running away because that thing's gonna explode, um, Thorn ends up showing up, and she threatens like Rick and Michonne. But Thorn's character is kind of like doubtful. She doesn't really know what to do. She's kind of like, you guys are plotting something, like go back and undo it. And Rick and Michonne kind of like are like, okay. So they start to go back into the tent to try to undo what they did or whatever. And at that time, Beale zombie comes out, and they run, and the whole thing explodes and all of the gases come out. So then we have a showdown where, I was expecting this showdown to be kind of like a war, but it's just basically a fight between all of the zombies, Rick and Michonne, and Thorn. Right? Thorn's trying to stop Rick and Michonne. So first, Rick fights Thorn, and then he ends up getting overpowered by some zombies, and then at the same time, Michonne comes out with her katana, and she fights. She ends up fighting Thorn, trying to stop them, and Michonne ends up killing Thorn, and Rick ends up getting away from the zombies. He throws, I think, some type of grenade, and they all blow up. And after that, he's able to, get back with Michonne. They get on top of this thing, and after they get on top of the thing, like a bunch of zombies are over them. But then we cut to like this scene which I think was the most fan service scene that we got, because that's when Rick and Michonne reunite with Judith and JR, RJ, sorry, and their kids. And this happens because we hear over the radio that there's the CRC. Now, I was trying to investigate what the CRC was, and it just says it's the Civic Republic. And then when Beale talks about what the CRM is going to do, he says something like, we need to stop the the CRC, or the Civic Republic, or something like that. So then what we overhear, like on this radio, is basically that the CRM was like just one, it wasn't the club, it wasn't the like overpowering machine we thought it was. I guess it was just like an arm from this bigger place, bigger people, I guess, which is the CRC, which I imagine is the Civic Republic. And those guys, I guess, they weren't military. So this talks about how if a country or a place is run by the military, it's going to become very pragmatic, right? And it's not going to have any humanity in it left. So then there's talk about how the government is actually the one who's going to take over from now on, or something like that. Rick and Michonne arrive with Judith and RJ, and we see like the helicopters flying over. They actually get there via helicopter. So that part is not really clear. I mean, the ending is kind of emotional because they're all reunited. The kids are there and everything, and I guess they live happily ever after. But okay, that's why I'm saying I have mixed feelings, because it's not that the series felt rushed. I just felt that, and if you see my earlier videos, I talk about how the CRM could be this potential big threat that the whole Walking Dead universe, with all of its spin-offs, could fight against, right? But I don't know what's going to happen after this. I imagine that it was just like, basically putting Rick's character to rest. Like, okay, this is the ending for Rick, because there's a lot of talk about on social media how he started out looking for his family and how he ends up finding his family, which is like another family, but nonetheless a family. But I'm thinking it was the series finale. There's not gonna be a second season, and there's actually not gonna be anything else having to do with the CRM. I guess that's all it took to wipe out the imminent big threat of the CRM. I was kind of like, that's it. I mean, you have characters like Negan or the Governor, right, in the Walking Dead series, which took like a span of 2 seasons, and the Governor's character was really developed. Negan's also, you have like these great villains, but then you have very generic villains, disposable, almost like the CRM, I guess. If that was it, and there was no other type of event that took place at the end or towards the end that could indicate a post season or something else happening afterwards. No cliffhanger like when Michonne and Rick jump out of the helicopter back in season in episode 3, right? I think so. That was literally like cliffhanger, like they were hanging. No, this one was pretty much fan service. There was just a conclusion. So my closing remarks. I mean, there were some outstanding moments. I think the biggest one definitely was probably Nat's character in episode 2. Just the way that episode 2 was. I mean, that was heart essence of The Walking Dead. I believe. Also, when they jumped out of the helicopter, that was that got people talking. Like there was talk about like, did they jump together? Did she push Rick? Like what was that about? Did they land in some? I thought they landed in like some trees, but they landed in water. So that was literally a cliffhanger, right? Episode 4 in the reunion, I think that whole episode, where they're bickering, going back and forth, I think also stands out. Jadis's death, Rick cutting off his arm at the beginning of episode 1, Rick killing Beale, and Michonne killing Thorne, right? So those moments are also kind of key, or they kind of stand out from the series. But yeah, I guess my closing remarks would just be like, I mean, it's a good ending for Rick. I don't know if he's gonna continue in this Walking Dead universe. I imagine he's not. But I know from the creator, because he said he's not gonna stop making The Walking Dead for as long as he's gonna keep pushing it for as long as he can, which I think is great. I mean, there's a lot of people that are still watching these, and like they say, like Michael Jackson's Thriller was #1 because of the zombie element. There's something about zombies that just connects with us. We're not really sure what it is. Maybe it's the apocalypse talk. But yeah, that's something that's still there. So yeah, mixed feelings. I think it was a good ending, but I think they could have given us more. They may give us more. I think the CRM had well, the way they were talking about the CRM, they definitely had more potential to give. They had more to squeeze out of the CRM, not just like a bunch of soldiers that could easily be wiped out. Um, but that was still kind of funny how they just killed all those soldiers. But yeah, I guess that's everything I got to say for this video. Hope you enjoyed it, and let me know what you think. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.